out, folks. He's coming out, folks. Bro, how you gonna act like this dude is not gonna fucking own, dude? Look at this goddamn adoring crowd. Look at these fucking simps, including myself.
The next President and First Lady of the United States of America, President Donald J. Trump, accompanied by Mrs. Melania Trump.
Is this Mar-a-Lago? Hell yeah, baby.
Well, thank you very much, Melania, myself, and our entire family. I want to thank you all for being here tonight. It's a very special occasion at a very special place. You and all of those watching are the heart and soul of this incredible movement and the greatest country in the history.
You know that room smells
Very
like
simple.
death, okay? You
There's
know
never
that
been
room smells
anything
like death and the
like
worst
it.
old kind of cologne
This
you
great
could
movement of
imagine.
ours. Never been anything like it, and perhaps there will never be anything like it again. There's never been anything to compete with what we have all done. Thank you. Ladies and gentlemen, distinguished guests, and my fellow citizens, America's comeback starts right now.
Draco Noir and Sulfur.
2 years ago, when I left office, the United States stood ready for its golden age. Our nation was at the pinnacle of power, prosperity, and prestige, towering above all rivals, vanquishing all enemies, and striding into the future, confident and so strong. In 4 short years, everybody was doing great. Men, women, African Americans, Asian Americans, Hispanic Americans, everybody was thriving like never before. There was never a time like this. We turned the page on decades of globalist sellouts and one-sided trade deals, lifted millions out of poverty, and together we built the greatest economy in the history of the world.
Believe me.
When the virus hit our shores, I took decisive action and saved lives and the U.S. economy. And by October of the same year, America was roaring back with the #1 fastest economic recovery ever recorded. How about that? All of the incoming administration and all they had to do was just sit back and watch. Inflation was non-existent. Our southern border was by far the strongest ever. And because the border was so tight, drugs were coming into our country at the lowest level in many, many years. Importantly, after decades of rising energy costs, the United States had finally attained the impossible dream of American energy independence, which soon would have turned into energy dominance. For the first time in memory, China was reeling and back on its heels. You've never seen that before, because the United States was outdoing them on every single front, and China was paying billions and billions of dollars in taxes and tariffs. The farmers know that because they got 28 billion of it. No president had ever sought or received $1 for our country from China until I came along, and we were getting hundreds of billions of dollars. Many people think that because of this, China played a very active role in the 2020 election. Just saying, just saying.
Who? No one thinks
Sure, that didn't happen.
That's not even
Instead
a
of jobs
conspiracy
and
that
factories leaving
people
America
think.
for China,
He
they
just
were for the
who
first
thinks
time
that?
ever
They
leaving
say like
China.
even Cuba and Che Guevara and shit, but I've never heard like people be like China.
Businesses were pouring back because of our historic tax
And they
and
think it
regulation
now.
cuts, the
You bet
biggest
your
in
ass
both
they think it now.
categories in history, bigger even than what Ronald Reagan was able to produce, and he produced a lot. China, Russia, Iran, and North Korea were in check and respected. They respected the United States, and quite honestly, they respected me. I knew them well. I knew them well. The vicious ISIS caliphate, which no president was able to conquer, was decimated by me and our great warriors in less than 3 weeks, and al-Baghdadi, its founder, was hunted down and killed. North Korea had not launched a single long-range missile since my summit with Chairman Kim Jong-un nearly 3 years before. We developed a relationship, and that's a good thing, not a bad thing. It's a good thing. Very good thing, actually, because look at what's happening today. My opponents made me out to be a warmonger and just a terrible person who would immediately go into war. They said during the 2016 campaign that if he becomes president...
Bro, you literally
never be a
used the
war
mother
with
of all bombs like 3 days into your presidency.
wars like you've never seen before.
And you assassinated a foreign head of state.
I've gone decades without
Why
a
are
war.
we-
The first
he
president
drone
to do
strike
it
more
for
than
that
Obama.
long a period. The world was at peace. America was prospering, and our country was on track for an amazing future because I made big promises to the American people. And
Jealous?
unlike other presidents,
Dude,
I
that's
kept
so good.
my promises. I kept them.
Facebook sent a memo to its fact checkers this afternoon telling them if Trump announces he's running for president tonight, they can no longer fact check anything he says. That's awesome. Dude, things are getting so cool. Dude, I'm running for president. No more fact checking, baby.
Thank you very much. Under our
Fuck is
leadership,
that?
we were a great and glorious nation, something you haven't heard for quite a long period
Shouldn't
of
you
time.
be
We
fact
were a
checking him
strong
harder?
nation,
Like,
and
what the fuck?
importantly, we were a free nation. But now we are a nation in decline. We are a failing nation. For millions of Americans, the past 2 years under Joe Biden have been a time of pain, hardship, anxiety, and despair. As we speak, inflation is the highest in over 50 years. Gas prices have reached the highest levels in history and expect them to go much higher now that the strategic national reserves, which I filled up, have been virtually drained in order to keep gasoline
He filled
prices
them up.
lower
Dude, he's
just
saying
prior to
he's
the
responsible
election.
for Biden being able to lower
Joe
gas
Biden
prices.
has intentionally surrendered our energy independence.
That's wild.
There is no longer even a thought of dominance.
Which implies he knows
and
that
we are
it's
now
good, that
begging
people
for
recognize
energy
it.
help from foreign nations, many of whom find us detestable. Our southern border has been erased, and our country is being invaded by millions and millions of unknown people, many of whom are entering for a very bad and sinister reason. And you know what that reason is. We will be paying a big price for this invasion into our country for years to come. Hundreds of thousands of pounds of deadly drugs, including very lethal fentanyl, are flooding across the now open and totally porous southern border. The blood-soaked streets of our once great cities are cesspools of violent crimes, which are being watched all over the world as leadership of other countries explain that this is what America and democracy is really all about. How sad. The United States has been embarrassed, humiliated, and weakened for all to see. The disasters in Afghanistan, perhaps the most embarrassing moment in the history of our country, where we lost lives, left Americans behind, and surrendered $85 billion worth of the finest military equipment anywhere in the world. And Ukraine, which would have never happened if I were your president, are something.
Said Ukraine would never happen if he was president.
And even the Democrats admit that. That's something I've seen them admit over and over again.
All the Democrats, they're always
But
admitting it because
our
they're like, it's
enemies
good
are
that Ukraine is
speaking
happening.
of us with scorn and laughter and derision because of those two events. But there are many more. Even just today, a missile was sent in, probably by Russia, to Poland, 50 miles into Poland. And people are going absolutely wild and crazy, and they're not happy. They are very, very angry. Now we have a president who falls asleep at global conferences, was held in contempt by the
I took the
British
walk to
Parliament
Poland.
over Afghanistan,
Little yachty.
thanks to the words of wisdom. He said thank you to the wrong country for inviting him to a major summit on the environment of all things.
Bro, it's kind of funny that he's
Like
shitting on
days to get
Biden
there
for
and then
misstating things when
calls
he
the
always
country
does that.
A name that
Like
was
he
actually a
did that
country on
all the
another
time
continent.
during his presidency. He'd shake the wrong
he's leading
hands.
us to
He'd
the
push
brink of
world
nuclear
leaders.
war,
Like
a
he said
concept
all that. He had all those
unimaginable
goofs and gaffes.
2 short years ago. You cannot mention the nuclear word. It's too devastating. The Green New Deal and the
The
environment,
N-word, as I
which
call
they say
it.
may affect us in 300 years, is all that is talked about. And yet nuclear weapons, which would destroy the world immediately, are never even discussed as a major threat. Can you imagine? They say the ocean will rise 1/8 of an inch over the next 200 to 300
I'm in
years.
Florida. It's not
But
rising.
don't worry about nuclear weapons that can take out entire countries with one shot. Something is wrong with their thinking. Under Biden and the radical Democrats, America has been mocked, derided, and brought to its knees, perhaps like never before.
It's kind of wild that he also
here tonight to
he
declare
destroyed the
It
denuclearization
does not
agreement.
have to be this way.
Like he
It does not
single-handedly
have to be this
destroyed the
way.
denuclearization agreement with Iran, which Iran kept following, and he still sanctioned them. Like if your goal is less nukes,
2
you
years
fuck that up.
ago, we were a great nation, and soon we will be a great nation again. The decline of America is being forced upon us by